Barcelona, 1912. Children are disappearing from the streets, one by one, vanishing into the narrow alleys of the Gothic Quarter. The police find some of them, what's left of them. Their bodies drained, bones crushed for powder, skin and hair preserved in jars. The woman responsible? She's selling their remains as medicine to Barcelona's wealthiest families. They called her the Vampire of Barcelona, but her real crimes are far worse than any vampire legend. This is the story of Enriqueta Martí, child kidnapper, serial killer, and possibly the most evil woman in Spanish history. Let me take you back to early 1900s Barcelona. The city is booming. Modernist architecture is rising everywhere. Gaudí is building the Sagrada Familia. The rich are getting richer. But in the shadows of these beautiful buildings, in the twisted streets of the Raval and Gothic Quarter, poverty is crushing. Children sleep in doorways, families starve. And in this darkness, Enriqueta Martí is hunting. She's in her 40s, unremarkable looking, the kind of woman you'd pass on the street without a second glance. Sometimes she dresses in rags, begging for coins. Other times she wears fine clothes and jewelry, pretending to be a wealthy widow. This ability to move between worlds, to be invisible when she wants to be, makes her the perfect predator. Her victims? The children nobody misses, street kids, orphans, the sons and daughters of the desperately poor, children whose parents are too hungry, too exhausted, or too drunk to watch them every second. Enriqueta knows exactly who to target. She's been doing this for years, maybe decades, and she's gotten very, very good at it. Her method is simple but effective. She approaches children with kindness, offers them food, a warm place to sleep. Sometimes she tells them she's looking for a servant and will pay them. Other times she says she knows their parents and has been sent to fetch them. The children trust her. Why wouldn't they? She's just a woman, a grandmother really, harmless. They follow her through the winding streets, into buildings that smell of decay, upstairs that creak, into rooms with no windows, and they're never seen alive again. But here's what makes Enriqueta different from other killers. She doesn't just murder these children, she uses them, every part of them. She keeps some alive in her apartments, locked in rooms, dressed in rags. She calls them her children, but treats them like livestock, waiting to be butchered. When she kills them, and the methods vary, she's methodical, clinical. She drains their blood into jars, grinds their bones into powder, preserves their hair, renders their fat, even keeps their clothes. Why? Because in 1912 Barcelona, there's a market for this. The wealthy, the desperate, the gullible, they believe in folk medicine, ancient cures. They think consuming parts of children, especially young children, can cure diseases, restore youth, bring good luck, even cure tuberculosis, which is ravaging Europe. Enriqueta knows this, and she's become a supplier. She visits wealthy homes in the example district, the nice part of town. She presents herself as a healer, a woman with access to rare medicines. She sells them jars of ointments and tonics. She never tells them what's really in these concoctions.
They don't ask. They don't want to know. They just want the cure. And Enriqueta makes a fortune, enough to rent multiple apartments across Barcelona, enough to buy the fine clothes she uses as a disguise, enough to keep killing. But she's careful. She moves apartments frequently, uses different names, never stays in one place too long. The police in 1912 aren't equipped to track someone like this. No fingerprint databases, no forensic science, no way to connect murders happening in different neighborhoods. And besides, who's reporting these children missing? Street kids don't have advocates. Their parents, if they have any, are too poor to push the authorities. These children are invisible in life, even more invisible in death. Enriqueta operates for years this way. How many victims? We'll never know for certain. At least a dozen confirmed, possibly dozens more. Some historians think she may have killed over 50 children. 50 lives, 50 families destroyed, all to feed the vanity and superstition of Barcelona's upper class. But every killer makes mistakes, and in February 1912, Enriqueta makes hers. Her name is Teresita Guitart Congost. She's 5 years old, and unlike Enriqueta's usual victims, Teresita isn't a street child. She's from a working family, not wealthy but not destitute either. More importantly, she has parents who will move heaven and earth to find her. February 10th, 1912, Teresita is playing near her home in the Raval district. It's afternoon. Other children are around. She's supposed to be safe. A woman approaches. Kind face, gentle voice. She tells Teresita she has candy, or maybe she says she knows Teresita's mother. The story varies depending on who tells it. Whatever she says, it works. Teresita follows her and vanishes. When Teresita doesn't come home that evening, her parents panic. They search the neighborhood, ask everyone, check with family and friends. Nothing. They go to the police, and here's where things are different, because Teresita's parents don't give up. They make noise, they put up posters, they offer rewards. They turn their daughter's disappearance into a public case. The police have to respond. They start investigating, asking questions, and slowly a picture emerges. Several children have gone missing in this area, not just Teresita. And there's a woman. Multiple witnesses mention her, different descriptions because she changes her appearance, but they're all describing the same person. A woman in her 40s, sometimes well-dressed, sometimes in rags, always approaching children, always kind at first. The police start watching the neighborhood, checking buildings, looking for this mysterious woman. Meanwhile, Teresita is alive. Barely. She's in one of Enriqueta's apartments on Carré de Ponent, number 29, a building that should be condemned. Dark, filthy, multiple families crammed into spaces meant for one. Teresita is in a room. It's more of a closet than a room. No windows. The door is locked from the outside. She's not alone. There's another child here, a girl named Angelita, maybe 8 years old. She's been here longer. She knows what's coming. The room smells of death and chemicals. There are jars on shelves. Teresita can't see what's in them, but she can smell them, sweet and rotten at the same time. Enriqueta keeps them alive for now, gives them scraps of food, water sometimes. She needs them alive a bit longer, has orders to fill, medicines to prepare. But Teresita is from a family that loves her, that's looking for her, and that makes her dangerous to keep. February 27th, 1912, 17 days after Teresita disappeared. A neighbor in the building on Carrère de Ponent hears something, children crying. Not unusual in this building, children are everywhere, but these cries are different, desperate, terrified. The neighbor, Claudia Elias, is suspicious. She knows the woman who rents that apartment, knows her as Enriqueta. She's always seemed odd. Comes and goes at strange hours, sometimes well-dressed, sometimes not. And children are around her, but they're always different children. Claudia mentions this to other neighbors. They've noticed it too. There's something wrong about that woman. They decide to investigate. A group of neighbors goes to Enriqueta's door. They knock. No answer. They knock harder. Finally, Enriqueta opens the door, just a crack. She's pleasant, apologetic, says everything is fine. The children were just playing too rough. But the neighbors aren't satisfied. They push past her, into the apartment. What they find will haunt them forever. The apartment is divided into several rooms, all of them locked. The neighbors force the doors open. In one room, they find Teresita and Angelita, both alive but barely, filthy, malnourished, covered in bruises and cuts. Teresita's hair has been partially shaved off. Both girls are wearing rags that might have once been white dresses but are now brown with dirt and blood. The children can barely speak. They're in shock, but they're alive. In another room, the neighbors find something worse. Jars, dozens of jars. Some contain liquids, blood. Others contain powders, ground bone. Still others contain hair, tied with ribbons. And in some jars there are larger pieces, preserved in alcohol, body parts. The neighbors realize what they're seeing. They're standing in a charnel house, a factory of death.
On shelves, there are more items: children's clothes, neatly folded, small shoes, toys. Each one represents a child. Each one represents a victim. One neighbor vomits, another screams, a third runs to get the police. Enriqueta tries to run. She pushes through the crowd of neighbors, heading for the stairs, but they grab her, hold her. She fights like an animal, scratching and biting, but there are too many of them. She's still fighting when the police arrive. The police enter the apartment. Even hardened officers are shocked by what they find. They start cataloging evidence: the jars, the clothes, the bones. It takes hours. They find notes, records. Enriqueta kept careful accounts of her sales: who bought what, how much they paid. There are names, addresses. Some of Barcelona's most prominent citizens are on this list. The police realize this isn't just about one killer. This is about a system, a network, suppliers and customers. Enriqueta is just the most visible part of something larger and darker. Teresita and Angelita are taken to hospital. They'll survive physically, though the psychological scars will never heal. Teresita's parents are reunited with their daughter. They're among the lucky ones. The police search Enriqueta's other apartments. She has several across the city. In each one, they find similar horrors: more jars, more evidence, more victims. They start identifying the remains, matching bones to missing children. It's a nightmare. Some children have been missing for years. Some were never reported missing at all. The death toll climbs. 12 confirmed victims, probably more. The bones don't always provide clear answers. Some victims are too decomposed to identify. Enriqueta is arrested, taken to prison, and Barcelona explodes in rage. News of the Vampire of Barcelona spreads through the city like wildfire. Newspapers publish every detail, some true, some exaggerated. The public is horrified and fascinated in equal measure. The wealthy clients whose names appear in Enriqueta's records, they panic. Some flee the city. Others claimed they were deceived, that they had no idea what they were buying. The police investigate, but prove nothing. The rich protect the rich. Most of these customers face no consequences. Meanwhile, Enriqueta sits in her cell. She refuses to speak to police, won't answer questions, won't explain herself. Her silence is maddening to investigators who want to know how many victims, where the bodies are, how long she's been doing this. She just stares at them with cold eyes and says nothing. The trial is set for 1913. The prosecutors have overwhelming evidence: eyewitness testimony from neighbors, surviving victims, physical evidence from the apartments, Enriqueta's own records. It seems like an open and shut case. She'll be convicted, probably executed. Justice will be served. But the trial never happens. May 1913. Enriqueta is being held in the women's section of Barcelona's Reina Amalia prison. She's awaiting trial, still refusing to talk. The other prisoners know who she is, what she did. Even among criminals, child killers are despised. They make their hatred known. Enriqueta is kept separate from the general population for her own safety. But prisons in 1913 aren't secure. Guards can be bribed, doors can be left unlocked. On the night of May 12, 1913, something happens. The details are murky. The official report says there was a disturbance in the women's section, prisoners rioting, guards overwhelmed. In the chaos, several inmates got into Enriqueta's cell. By the time guards restored order, Enriqueta Martí was dead, beaten to death, her skull crushed, her body broken. The official story is that she was killed by fellow inmates, vigilante justice. The guards couldn't stop it in time. Very tragic. Case closed. But there are other theories. Some say the guards let it happen. Others say the authorities arranged it because a trial would be embarrassing. All those wealthy names in her client list, all those respected citizens who bought her medicines. A trial would expose them. Better to let Enriqueta die in prison. Let the story end. Let the secrets stay buried. And so, the Vampire of Barcelona dies without ever standing trial, without ever explaining herself, without ever revealing all her victims' names. The jars and evidence are destroyed, the records disappear, the wealthy clients breathe easier, and Barcelona tries to forget. But some things can't be forgotten. The families of the victims don't forget. The survivors don't forget. Teresita Guitart, who escaped that room, carries those memories her entire life. And the city itself remembers. The building on Carrer de Ponent, where Enriqueta kept her victims, becomes infamous. People avoid it. Eventually, it's torn down, but locals still call that corner Enriqueta's place.
So who was Enriqueta Martí really? We know surprisingly little about her early life. She was born around 1868 in a small village in Catalonia. Poor family, little education. She married young, had children, but something went wrong. Some say she was abused. Others say she was always cruel. She abandoned her family, moved to Barcelona, and disappeared into the city's underworld. From there, she reinvented herself multiple times. She had at least a dozen known aliases. She could be anyone she wanted: rich widow, poor beggar, kind grandmother, each identity carefully crafted for different purposes. This chameleon ability made her incredibly dangerous. She could access any level of society: the slums where she found her victims, the mansions where she sold her products. She moved between worlds like a ghost. But why did she do it? Money, certainly. She made good money from her trade. But there's something else, something darker. The neighbors who found her apartment said she seemed to enjoy it: the control, the power. She kept children locked up for days, sometimes weeks, before killing them. She didn't have to do that. She chose to. And the way she used their bodies, the methodical dismemberment, the careful preservation, this suggests someone who took pride in her work, a craftsperson, an artist of death. Some modern psychologists who've studied the case believe Enriqueta was a psychopath: no empathy, no remorse, just cold calculation and a hunger for control. Others think she genuinely believed in the power of her medicines, that she convinced herself she was providing a service, a healer, not a killer. But the truth is probably simpler and more disturbing. She did it because she could, because Barcelona in 1912 made it possible, because poverty made children vulnerable, because superstition made the wealthy gullible, because police were ineffective and society was indifferent. Enriqueta saw an opportunity and she took it, for years, without conscience, without mercy. The Vampire of Barcelona case changed Spain. It exposed the dark underbelly of a supposedly modern, progressive city. It forced conversations about child welfare, about poverty, about the exploitation of the vulnerable. New laws were passed to protect children, orphanages were reformed, police procedures improved. Barcelona began to address the poverty that had made Enriqueta's crimes possible. But these changes came too late for her victims, for the children who died alone and afraid in those locked rooms, for the families who never got answers, for the survivors who never fully recovered. Today, over a century later, Enriqueta Martí remains one of history's most disturbing killers, not because of the body count, though that's horrific enough, but because of what she represents. She represents the banality of evil, the way monsters can hide in plain sight, the way society's failures create opportunities for predators. She was never a vampire. Vampires are fiction, supernatural. What Enriqueta did was worse, because it was real. It was human evil in its purest form. And the most disturbing part? The system that enabled her, the wealthy clients who bought from her, the officials who looked the other way, they all survived. Most faced no punishment. Life went on. Enriqueta died in prison. But the conditions that created her, the poverty, the desperation, the willingness to exploit the vulnerable, those didn't die with her. Even today, children disappear. Predators hunt. Society looks away. The faces and places change, but the pattern remains. The Vampire of Barcelona is gone,
but what she represented, that's still with us. So remember Teresita. Remember Angelita. Remember all the children whose names we'll never know, the ones who vanished into Enriqueta's apartments and never came out. They deserved better. They deserved protection. They deserved justice. And so do the vulnerable children of today. Because if we forget the lessons of the past, if we ignore the warning signs, if we allow poverty and desperation to create new hunting grounds, then somewhere another Enriqueta is waiting, another predator is watching, another child is at risk. The Vampire of Barcelona is dead, but the darkness she thrived in, that requires constant vigilance to keep at bay. If you found this documentary informative, please share it. Awareness is the first step in protecting the vulnerable. These stories need to be told. These victims need to be remembered. Justice for Enriqueta's victims came too late. Let's not make that mistake again.